Welcome to southern Portugal. Now, I've been coming to this region, known as the Algarve, since the early 1980s. Well, over 40 years ago when I first came here, it was nothing but a sunny stretch of coast with a few small cities and fishing villages, maybe a small guest house or a family-run hotel, but that was about it. Well, in the ensuing 40 years, it's really boomed in terms of tourist development, and it's become a mecca for expats from Northern Europe, especially now in the winter season. But fortunately, there are still a few places that retain that old world charm, and this is one of them, a small city called Tavira. My wife Peggy and I will be based here for about 2 to 3 weeks, and we're going to see if we can do what we call slow travel. We're not going to rent a car, we're not going to do a lot of heavy sightseeing. We're just going to see if there's enough to pique our interest for 2 or 3 warm weeks in the middle of winter. Stay with us. Tavira traces its roots to the Phoenicians during the Bronze Age. Then came the Celts, the Romans, and finally the Moors, before it became part of Portugal in the 13th century. It's built along the banks of the Rio Gilao and connected by a series of bridges, the best known of which is the Roman Bridge. Climb up the city's whitewashed alleys to the castle and church complex at the top of the hill. These were originally a Moorish construction from the 10th century that was meant to protect the city and the harbor. The castle ramparts provide some great views. And even in winter, the garden is full of blossoming flowers. And offers great looks at the towers of Santa Maria Church and its distinctive clock. Tavira's finest church is the Igreja Misericordia, built between 1541 and 1551. Its Baroque interior is mostly from the 1700s and is lined with tile murals depicting scenes from the life of Christ. These are made of the distinctive blue and white tiles called azulejos. If you time your visit right, you can catch one of the concerts of Fado music that are performed several times a week in the church.
Às vezes não me presinto dentro dos versos que canto, mas cego os olhos e minto, e a mim própria me pinto da cor do riso ou do pranto. Mas cego os olhos e minto, e a mim própria me pinto da cor do riso ou do pranto. Às vezes sinto diferente do que o poeta escreveu, mas fico de mim ausente e num fado tão presente que o fado parece-me.
By the time we got out of the concert, it was late afternoon, and the last rays of golden sun were raking across the town. But once the sun sets, Tavira takes on a special charm, as only cities steeped in history seem to be able to do. And the best thing to do then is get a ringside table to the magic hour at a cafe in the Praça da República. until it's time to hit a cozy restaurant for dinner. When I was flying my drone and walking along the Rio Hilao, I noticed that there were countless salt flats in the area, and I wondered why. And if slow travel allows you one thing, it's the time it takes to do some first-hand research. The practice of harvesting salt here in the Algarve spans the millennia. It started with the Phoenicians, although it's the Romans who are credited with first building an array of salt pans across the coast. You can still find the ruins of Roman salt pans all along the Algarve coast. But you may have to look hard, because they're often sandwiched in between more modern structures. By the 1100s, the Algarve was shipping salt all across Europe. And in the 15th and 16th centuries, it was the preservative properties of salt that helped turn Portugal into a global superpower. To find out more about present-day salt operations in the Algarve, I signed up for a tour at the nearby Salinas de Greyal. This is a boutique operation whose smaller pans yield salt for human consumption, as opposed to road and animal use. Salt is only harvested in the summer, but during the winter they do maintenance work on the pans. The red coloration in some of the pans is caused by huge numbers of microscopic organisms living in the water and salt crust.
So we see them because they're females, or?
Including these brine shrimp, which are then consumed by flamingos and give the birds their pink coloration. But the prize is the fleur de sal, the topmost crust that requires careful harvesting by skilled workers using traditional tools. This is the salt that is craved by gourmet chefs around the world. Well, we had one more rabbit hole to go down regarding the subject of salt in the Algarve, and this one would take us over 600 feet underground. Salt plays an important part of the history here in the Algarve, and you can see from the salt flats along the coast and the Rio Formosa. But we're going to come and tour a salt mine as well as a salt flat. So we're going to go down about 200 meters and see what it's like mining salt here in the Algarve.
Don't touch this cable, it's greasy, and be careful with your head, okay?
Our guide was a very sharp young man named Alex, who took good care of us as he transported us down to Middle Earth.
Watch your step and don't touch the greasy cable. So now it takes 3 minutes, okay?
How deep are we going?
230 meters. This is also the only place that you can visit in Portugal where you are below sea level. So we are going to be 30 meters below sea level. Be careful with your head and be careful with the gap over here, okay? I'm just going to ask you to wait more on that side while we wait for the rest of the group.
Since you can only fit 5 people in the cage at a time, it took several trips to get our group down, and I took advantage of the extra time to explore the immediate surroundings and pay my respects to a creche featuring a statue of Santa Barbara, the patron saint of miners. It can't hurt to cover all your bases when you're this deep in the hole.
So we have mine basically to the east, north, and south. In total, 45 kilometers of tunnels.
Fortunately, we didn't have to walk all 45 kilometers of the tunnel to get a good idea of the scope of the operation.
In terms of salt, pretty much every country has its own stock. We are talking about probably the 7th most extracted mineral in the world. So it's not a lack of quantity. Sometimes it's more matters of market than anything else. Another deposit, one on each side, but now with an inclined angle, as you can see. This works basically as a slide. When the salt starts to go in, it slides down to skip number 1 and skip number 2.
Unlike the salt produced on the surface, the product here is destined for roads and farm animals.
On the roads, we always try to mix. The small pieces melt faster on the center, the ice melts, turns into water, the water goes to the sides, and on the sides we put the bigger chunks. On animal feed, we just use this one. It needs to be super fine. This is still too big, they can break a tooth or get it stuck in their throat, so it needs to be super small.
But the most surprising revelation came when we learned that in the near future, there might be more money to be made giving tours and staging events than in mining salt.
250 people here on the last Saturday for the opening of an art exhibition that you are still going to see. This is the place where we organize some events from time to time.
Admiring art down here was a surreal experience.
This one is the nice painting exhibition, the nicest that we have. At least the one that I like more. Because we have others, but it's not really my type of art. But, as they say, art is in the eye of the beholder. For me, the mine itself is art.
I couldn't help but agree with Alex on that point. As we went through the final gallery, a collection of statues of, who else? Santa Barbara. As we headed back to the elevator cage, I stopped one more time to pay my respects to our patron saint and request a problem-free trip back to the surface.
A lot of times I have people that are taller than the cage.